This is a song that tells a story of a wandering youth's quest for manhood through the prickly pears of life, of a bully who loved his mother, clipped his nose hairs with a bowie knife. But through a mighty victory he received his comeuppance. 'Twas put on his derriere by a lonely sage named Nate I chanced to meet. On his trusty horse, Robespierre. Listen closely now as I begin my song, so one day you can sing along. But first I must caution you to pay close attention, 'cause listening to Nate talk was like trying to get a drink out of a fire hose, heaven knows. As for me, call me Ishmael. Ishmael Dimmendsdale, that's my name. 6 foot tall, though I'm only 16, riding in a Nukahiva to ply my trade. I'm a horse cobbler, you see, the kind that fixes shoes, not the kind you eat. But in my heart, I have a wondrous dream. 'Cause deep in my belly, like a bowl of vermicelli, there is a never-ending wellspring of joy, squatting like a toad, waiting to explode up through my gullet. You'd never forget it once you heard tell of it. That's right, folks, I'm a yodeler. Check it out. I can yodel while I help you with your horseshoes. Ain't no need to be embarrassed to yodel-hoo, yodel-hoo. It's my humble opine, there ain't nothing so fine as the pure, unfettered emotion of a quality yodel. I thought there's nothing more I'd be needin', no schooling, no reading, just barefoot horses and wobbly Adam's apples. Till in a fateful instance, I saw off in the distance a fellow whose roan had thrown a shoe. I thought I'd have him fixed up in a jiffy, but my life was changed inextricably. You know, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. Well, it was down about sunset when we met, and I'll never forget to recollect the way the light played off the coat of that gray. The whiteness of the horse made me pause to ponder about the triumph of the snowy-capped peaks over yonder versus the loathsome drool on a drunkard's beard. But nothing strained my noggin like the words begotten from the weary traveler now standing by my side. You can take your Socrates, Plato, Confucius, Nestor, Epimenides, Aristotle, and the 7 wise masters, and I'll even let you have that little Manhattan McGandy. You ain't never met a feller with more handy sayings in a cellar than Nate Hornthaw, the rhetorical oracle of the West. For instance, we eyeballed each other once or twice, and I began the conversation real friendly-like and chirped, "Like the architecture of your horse, she's a real work of art." He said,
"Art is long, life is short, judgment difficult, opportunity fleeting. Art is the stored honey of the human soul gathered on the wings of misery and travail, and architecture is frozen music."
Well, I didn't know rightly how to respond to this wiseacre, but wishing to fulfill the commands of our Maker, I courteously offered, "Sir, you are a man of rare passion, romance, and poetry." He replied,
"Without passion, man is a mere latent force and possibility, like the flint which awaits the shock of iron before it can give forth its spark. Romance is writing, a method of probing the depths of our common nature. For all good poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, joy and sadness which follows all the passions. A poem is the very image of life, expressed in its eternal truth. Poetry turns all things to loveliness. It exalts the beauty of that which is most beautiful, and it adds beauty to that which is most deformed, and poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world."
"Sir, I never heard anyone talk like this, except from Uncle Billy Budd once when he had the raving fits." Then I spit and exclaimed, "It's enough to make a fella ruminate." He said,
"A day spent without the sight or sound of beauty, the contemplation of a mystery, or the search for truth and perfection is a poverty-stricken day, and a succession of such days is fatal to human life. We would rather be ruined than changed. We would rather die in our dread than climb the cross of the moment and let our illusions die. False and doubtful position relied upon as unquestionable maxims keep those who build on them in the dark from the truth. Live dangerously and you live right. Dare to be wrong and to dream."
By now the horse was shod, and though this feller was rather odd, he asked me to dinner and I accepted. We rode into town, went to the Little Red Saloon, sat down, and as we supped, began to discuss the local color. Father Mapple drew near, so I hid my beer and told Nate, here comes a saint and a hero.
Saints are dead sinners, revised and edited. Show me a hero and I'll write you a tragedy.
Nate said lots of cheerful things like that, but Mapple was a kindly gent who preached from a tent, mostly about the lack of chastity among the ladies. He preached the catechism with such fanaticism, he kinda looked like a celibate with rabies. He asked if he could sit, and sure enough, lickety-split, started preaching on his favorite topic. Then his eye caught Nate, who was paying for his plate, and Mapple declared,
The great man is a fanatic philanthropic.
Nate returned,
Fanaticism consists of redoubling your efforts when you have forgotten your aim. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. Further, if unchastity in a woman whom St. Paul terms the glory of man be such a scandal and dishonor, then certainly in a man who is both the image and glory of God, it must, though commonly not so thought, be much more deflowering and dishonorable. In relation to celibacy, the result of this fashion of separating the spirit from the flesh is that it has necessitated convents and brothels.
Mapple was so pristine, to him the word brothel was obscene. Serpentine, it made him turn green, like he'd been eating sardines and nectarines, and run for Abilene, like he was being chased by an unclean Philistine. Like Josephine from the guillotine. Like Francois Truffaut to the Paris Green, like Tammy Faye Baker to a tambourine, like Hannibal Lecter to a fava bean, much to my chagrin, so I yodeled. See you later, Father Mapple, you're the apple of the tabernacle, though your sermons leave me baffled in the chapel, Father Mapple. Now I must become circumspect. Our story has reached the point of central conflict, for into the saloon limped a man who made my blood run chilly. Melvin Herville, the local bully, a man as hairy as a mammoth woolly, with an all-consuming passion for the fillies. The kind you pay for, not the kind you pray for. The kind you rope with, not the kind you elope with. The bridle versus the bride. The halter versus the altar. Melvin's eyes were like brimstone, as he said with a groan,
Who owns that roan? Just kicked me in the shin bone.
Nate said,
That roan I own, and his behavior I will not condone or disown, and I will atone or gladly pay for your headstone.
Let me buy that gray. Cash money I'll pay today, and I will not be dissuaded. By the way, what's her name?
Maximilien Francois Marie Isidore Robespierre, named after that little Frenchie who's part of the Reign of Terror, sent hundreds to the guillotine while he read Rousseau. All for the Committee of Public Safety, till one day he got just a little bit hasty, and as fate would have it, wound up on the wrong side of the blade himself.
I'll take that horse, and call her Roby for short. And if you don't like it, I'll shoot you in the gizzard, you egg-sucking, sheep-stealing, one-eyed son of a stuffed monkey.
At this I was thunderstruck. I dared not to deduct the effect this conduct would have on this strange duck. With the foul luck to meet this schmuck who ran amok after being shin-struck by Roby's kick. But by no plan of mine Yet perhaps in our Maker's grand design, in walked Melvin's mother. She was the feistiest redhead you've ever seen. Mouth like Krakatoa, and we was lucky 'cause the only thing in this whole world Melvin paid any mind to was his mama Hester. She did not approve of saloons and would fume at the fruit of her womb when he would consume all afternoon, then come home and prune and croon a tune like a drunken baboon. She stood in front of the Generalissimo, arms akimbo, and spake fortissimo, rivaling Enrico Caruso with a face more wrinkly than Jacques Cousteau after a bitchin' party on the old Calypso. She put the mojo on her bambino, who was no Diderot, and required her to start ab initio, so she moaned like a calico and turned as red as a claret Bordeaux. And her mane kindled like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace of King Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonio, as only could her tresses of scarlet let her. Melvin told her he was going to revival, but she knew he was lying 'cause his Sunday go-to-meetings was drying on the clothesline. So she followed him to the bar and threatened to cut off his inheritance. Nate chimed,
Ma'am, when planning for posterity, we ought to remember that virtue is not hereditary.
and shot to Melvin.
A liar should have a good memory.
Melvin threw Nate a look like a harpoon and shot back
We'll shoot it out tomorrow, I knew.
as his mother dragged him out by one earlobe. I said, we best skedaddle. So we hit the saddle and camped under the endless stars of heaven. Nate asked me if I liked to yodel as we talked deep into the night. I grinned like a sheep and asked, is a frog's butt water tight? And we laughed and shared our deepest feelings. I said I yodel for fun and answered to none except the good Lord above and Jesus his son. But my hope and my dream is to find me a little sugar plum, then my woman and me will yodel as one.
Truly,
Nate said.
women and God are the two rocks on which a man must either anchor or be wrecked. But it is with true love as it is with ghosts. The whole world speaks of it, but few have seen it. Verily, nature has given women so much power. But remember, son, if it ever comes the hour, the wedlock of the minds will be greater than that of the bodies. Now go to sleep.
The darkness weighed as heavy as a mastodon, and I found it difficult to sleep, for Nate had given me much to chew on. So I shut my eyes tight and did my best to restrict my thoughts to the wedlock of the minds. Then loneliness fell as a winter's mist, froze to my heart, mocked me with her kiss, and I hissed and reeled like a blind man trying to ward off a heavy blow. But I knew of a beacon to guide me home, so I laughed in my turn at one who would freeze a stone, embraced the darkness, asked for no quarter. Then dreamed of a girl who was carved like a cherubim, eyes like a razor, and a love like her antonym. And thrice I cursed all that stood between us, saw only a raised fist wrapped in shadow. Well, I woke to see the smoke from our smoldering campfire rise and thought, woo, that was weird, as the glory of the stars began to fade from the skies and bow to the colors being borne off in the horizon. The dawn burst as many colors as a beauty consultant's face and hung there like a bust behind a cosmetic counter, and the taste in my mouth first thing in the morning was nearly as pasty. I shivered in the chill of the morning air, and I shivered again at the thought of meeting Melvin, and would have despaired had it not been for the rapture without fail I received from gazing at the firmament. I turned to see Nate standing still as an icon, and Michelangelo couldn't have painted his mantle of mingled star, moon, and sunlight, and at the first break of day, he drew back and roared like a lion. I said, sir, we are of kindred spirits, for you yodel also, though it's strange to hear it, and I know you will triumph over the blaspheme of our enemy. He said,
Shrink not from blasphemy, it'll pass for wit. Men are so inclined to content themselves with what is commonplace, the spirit and the senses easily grow dead. It is only because they are not used to the taste of what is excellent that the generality of people take delight in silly and insipid things, provided they are new. We are accustomed to see men deride what they do not understand. They snarl at the good and beautiful because it lies beyond their sympathies. Do not be afraid of enemies. The worst they can do is kill you. Do not be afraid of friends. The worst they can do is betray you. Be afraid of the indifferent. They do not kill or betray, but only because of their silent agreement. Betrayal and murder exists on earth. He who does not bellow the truth when he knows the truth makes himself the accomplice of liars and forgers. Forge thy tongue on an anvil of truth, and what flies up, though it be but a spark, shall have weight.
I said, verily you are a good man, as good as Melvin is a bad man. Born and bred that way, and I'll always think so. He said,
The man who never alters his opinion is like standing water, breeds reptiles of the mind. Man has free choice, or otherwise counsels, exhortation, commands, prohibitions, rewards, and punishments would be in vain. There's no man so good who, were he to submit all his thoughts to the laws, would not deserve hanging 10 times in his life. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart?
on our way into town, my head throbbed like a pimple. And I lied and said, Gee, Nate, you make it all seem so simple. And he dribbled,
It is simple, deceptively simple, like the crest of a wave that does not show the myriad pressures beneath that makes the foam roll in grace to the welcoming beach. Always ask yourself, am I maturing, or are my illusions becoming more subtle?
I was starting to get sick of all this fancy talking, and I thought I might just root for Melvin as we were walking down Main Street when the clock struck noontide. I was gonna suggest we run and hide, but Melvin stepped out of the bar half pie-eyed and cried,
I'm gonna fill you full of lead, and then formaldehyde.
Melvin's six-shooter blazed like purgatory as I heard Nate mumble.
In war, there is no substitute for victory.
And to my delight, began to catch the bullets between his teeth. Two between his teeth, two between his toes, two between his fingers as a pathetic Melvin tried to reload, but behold, Nate was on him like a duck on a June bug. Nate busted his teeth, bent back his toes, spit in his ear, then whacked him with his elbows, and generally made Qui Cane Chain look like a big sissy. Melvin's broken body laid there in a heap, and an eerie silence crept through the streets as Nate rolled back his eyes and looked heavenward.
Nothing except a battle lost can be half so melancholy as a battle won. To die for an idea, it is unquestionably noble. But how much more noble would it be if man died for ideas that were true? For man lives and dies between his two eternities. It is easier to fight for principles than to live up to them. And the end and perfection of our victories is to avoid the vices and infirmities of those whom we subdue. For in taking revenge, a man is but even with his enemy. But in passing it over, he is superior. For it is a prince's part to pardon.
With that, Nate pulled out a handful of needles that glistened in the sun and started poking them in Melvin one by one, till the fool looked like a porcupine with his dander up. Then up he jumped with tears in his eyes and cried,
Hallelujah, brothers, I have seen the light, and from this day forward I will live my life according to the commands of our Creator.
And like Zacchaeus, he returned to the people the spoils of his extortion, and treated all men with brotherly love, whether king or simpleton, and Father Mapple rightly spoke.
Truly there is more joy in heaven over one sinner that repented than over 99 righteous persons.
For Melvin truly changed his ways and even built a library for which he paid, and then devoted himself to the art of writing. For Melvin declared,
One of the greatest things a human soul ever does is to see something and tell what he saw in a plain way. Hundreds of people can talk for one who can think, and thousands can think for one who can see, and all erroneous ideas would perish of their own accord if expressed clearly.
I thought to myself, great, here's another one with a colicky tongue. Then I witnessed a strange phenomenon. For in my heart I heard, books are good enough in their own way, but they are a mighty bloodless substitute for life. Then I knew the time had come for me to pack my bags and journey on and hit the trail that leads to our destiny. So at daybreak, Nate, Melvin, and I bid our farewells under the sheltering sky, and on a crisp, clean country morning, Nate left us with these words.
Man with a burning soul has but an hour of breath to build a ship of truth in which his soul may sail upon a sea of death. For death takes toll of beauty, courage, youth, of all but truth.
To which Melvin responded,
Give me wisdom, beauty, wisdom and passion. Bread to the soul, rain where the summers parch. Give me but these, and though the darkness close, even the night will blossom as the rose.
I was speechless as we took our saddles. The tears in my eyes I tried hard to battle as Melvin rode off, leaving Nate and me at the very place we first met. He said,
Not in Utopia, in subterranean fields or some secreted island heaven knows where, but in the very world which is the world of us all, the place in the end we find happiness, or not at all. Remember, son, talents are best nurtured in solitude. Character is best formed in the stormy billows of the world. Character is the basis of happiness. Happiness the sanction of character.
Then he spurred Roby into the dawn, which crowned his head like a wreath, and I hollered, Follow truth not too near the heels, lest it dash out thy teeth, then resisted the urge to follow him down that road. For the road goes ever on and on, down the door from where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow it if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say. Well, that's my song. I know it was over long. Please forgive me for my verbosity. In the end, it's myself I aim to please, and the good Lord above as I pray on my knees. Dear Lord, to paraphrase the German poet, dramatist, and philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, every day at least, let me hear a little song, read a good poem, see a fine picture, and if possible, speak a few reasonable words.
And you, Lord, lay